highly recommend that you do this. If you want to email me now or anytime in the future and just say, hey, I'd like to be put on the email list to find out about dog training, we have an email list that's just for the dog training. And I don't do this training myself because I'm not a good enough dog trainer. I'm very picky about who we bring in. We only have these specific trainers. This is Eric Briggs from Canine Natural Solutions. They're out of Joshua Tree, California, and they travel throughout the state every year. As you can see, they come here twice. And I set up all my clients for them and they do it. And the cost is really low. It's $90 to have your dog trained, as opposed to your dog being bit in the face and, oh, God forbid, sometimes dying from a rattlesnake bite. Or, if they make it, a lot of times it can be very painful. There can be very high cost medical bills. So I do recommend this highly. Also on my website, I have other resources about dogs. I have an article I wrote about how to protect your dog from snakes. Short answer is keep your dog on a leash, please. And if your dog is not going to be on a leash because maybe it's a hunting dog, that kind of thing, the rattlesnake avoidance training will help you a lot. And don't bother with the rattlesnake vaccine. We don't have any evidence that it works. Instead, you want to prevent the bite from happening to begin with. I'm glad to answer more questions about dogs later. We also just do tons of research and media support. So this is all free. This is me with Reese Evans at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Space Force Base, excuse me, back a couple of years ago. And what we're doing here is we've caught a rattlesnake and he's swabbing it to look for snake fungal disease, because recently there's been a disease spreading throughout snakes in North America, probably throughout the world too. It's affecting their skin. And one of the things that makes the military scientists so cool is they got out ahead of everybody else and they sampled snakes up and down the coast to see if they were here in California, if the fungus is. It is here, but it doesn't, knock on wood, it doesn't seem to be hurting snakes badly very often yet in California. So we're monitoring that. So I'm always glad to help, being one of the few people who can handle the snake safely by, as you can see, putting its business end up here in this plastic tube. Sometimes venom researchers will come through and they'll need venom samples. I actually am a baby with this. I won't do this myself, but we will help with catching the snakes and making them available to venom researchers, and doing this only in a nice, humane way for the snake is released afterwards. And then also media support. We do a lot of documentaries, films. This was for a documentary for Nat Geo called Something Bit Me, where the people were telling stories of their snake bites. And I only agree to do documentaries and such where they're balanced, meaning that they had a scientist like me on there in this case saying why the snake was biting, what it was doing to defend itself. So making it not sensationalized. So we spend a lot of time trying to make people see rattlesnakes in a different light. We also do snake tourism. We don't do this on a large scale, frankly, because I don't have time. But I reason that if people can see snakes in the wild being snakes, then their opinions about snakes might change. And some people really want to see unique things. It's like going on a birding tour, but seeing rattlesnakes instead. That's pretty neat, right? So we actually just do one of these a year. It's called a snake safari, and it's with a large donation to Central Coast Snake Services. Again, these donations are what allow me to still pay people to go drive 2 hours round trip to catch rattlesnakes. And so these are a couple of recent clients on these. We go to a private ranch in the Carrizo Plain in the spring, and we get to see lots of rattlesnakes. Each time we've seen anywhere from like 10 to 25 rattlesnakes. And we'll also have a chance to, I'll tube that rattlesnake so that the client has a chance to touch them and do everything, spend the day with me and fish and wildlife biologists, and have a beautiful gourmet lunch that I make too. So if this is something that you're interested in, it's a great gift for people. Do let me know, because we're now booking for spring. If it sounds like I'm starting to make advertisements, I'm sorry, but again, I want people to know about the cool things that we do. All we do, everything that we do that's to raise money is to do so that we can provide free services to rescue snakes and to rescue the people who need to be rescued with snakes in their yards. Okay, and then one of the things that has grown a lot in recent years is that I do snake safety training, not just in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties, but all over the state of California. I now have a huge list of clients, including environmental consultants, miners, construction workers, you name it, throughout the whole state, who find themselves in areas where there's rattlesnakes. And if there's a rattlesnake and you're working for PG&E and it's right where you need to work, you might be waylaid for a day or more if you have to wait for the biologist to come and get it. So every company has their different policies, but in some cases it's worth it for the actual personnel to be trained themselves. And in my classes, which are half-day classes, people learn all about the biology of rattlesnakes. So they're learning a lot of, some of the stuff you're learning tonight, they're being myth busted. So they are seeing the value of rattlesnakes. They're seeing why these animals deserve to live and not have their heads cut off in the classroom. And then afterwards, everyone learns, as you can see on the right-hand side right here, learns how to safely catch a rattlesnake into this bucket and release it using these tongs in a method that I've developed that's very hands-off, very keep your hand away from that bucket. No one's going to get bitten by that snake. So this is something that, like I said, has grown so much, and I'm really excited by it and proud of it to be able to provide good training to people to stay safe. And so they can then go on and do their job safely. We also recently started doing custom snake bite prevention and medical emergency plans where we will write up safety plans for safety managers of companies. For example, we did a statewide plan for all of PG&E about specifically what do you do if you're bitten. And, in those cases, we provide exact, like specific hospitals they should go to, et cetera. And you can see that I think at least that it's very attractive to how we've done it. So we're trying to do this in a way that is helping safety managers from companies out. My philosophy has been to come at it from all sides, right? We need to be able to provide an emergency response because frankly, if there's a rattlesnake in someone's yard, they think it's an emergency. It probably is. It's an emergency response. But then also we need to be able to start teaching kids why rattlesnakes aren't to be killed and why rattlesnakes are to be respected from a distance instead. We need to start doing things like teaching people how to be safe and what to do if there was a bite. All these types of things are things that we do from every single side of it. I'm trying to cover all the bases. So what should you do about rattlesnakes? Well, it's pretty easy. And again, I think many of you know this already. I'm talking to a chapter of the Audubon Society, which means many of you are outdoors people, you love wildlife. Chances are many of you even love rattlesnakes and you know how to watch and admire wildlife from a distance. And so that's exactly what you should do if you're out and about in the wild is consider yourself lucky to have seen that highly secretive animal, watch it from a distance and enjoy it. If it's on a trail, you simply are going to go around it. You want to stay about 10 feet away from rattlesnakes. Don't get much closer than that. If it's on the trail and it's blocking the trail, you can wait it out, or you can kind of take a long stick and maybe gently just prod it. That will get its attention and get it to move off the trail. Otherwise, you don't want to mess with rattlesnakes. Just leave them alone. They'll go away eventually. And of course, if there's a rattlesnake in your yard and you don't want to deal with it, now you know you can just call us or someone else if you're not in SLO or Santa Barbara counties from the free snake relocation directory. Okay. Just a couple more slides, and then I'm going to take some questions. So I wanted to just tell you all, in case you were not familiar with our other major initiative that is kind of part Central Coast Snake Services, part Cal Poly. It's called Project Rattlecam. And I thought that you would all like it because it was actually inspired by the Cal Falcon Cam, which I'm a UC Berkeley alum. And I was obsessed with watching the peregrine falcons on the Cal Falcon Cam for many years. And I thought we need to have live streaming cameras on rattlesnake dens too. So we did it, and we have a Colorado cam and a California cam that we can watch these snakes all day long every day. And it's pretty amazing. This is what they look like. They're not easy. They're not plug and play. These are remote wildlife cams, which are really hard to do. So we have in the background there, we have a weather station. This is a remotely operated pan tilt zoom camera. So people are watching it live on YouTube and they can tell us where they'd like us to focus the camera. And so here's just a couple quick clips because this talk is not about that, but this was our very first year of doing this back in 2021. This is here on the California Central Coast at an undisclosed location. And this is actually interesting because you're seeing this brand new baby rattlesnake come up and curl up with this female rattlesnake, which you might have thought, oh, well, the mothers take care of the babies. It's got to be the mom. But that's not the mom. That's a pregnant female. She's still pregnant. And we know this because that female is named macaroni. All the community scientists watch them and name these snakes. And so we know that that's not even the snake's mother. And it seems like they help protect other babies from other snakes. Now watch the baby. Oh my gosh, right? Watching these snakes behave as rattlesnakes actually behave and avoiding the sensationalism that we see on TV is changing people's minds about rattlesnakes. Here's one from the Colorado cam where there's hundreds of snakes. Watch this. Here's another pregnant female and someone else's baby comes up. We've discovered they have a secret language. They're talking to each other through these interesting little head jerks they give each other when they approach each other. Like, what is that? What on earth is happening? Right? We've never seen that happen before. Usually when we're watching snakes, so here we go, they're doing it again. Usually when we're watching snakes, we're there and they know that we're there and they're scared of us, so they don't behave naturally. So we're just learning a huge number of things now by watching these snakes hang out. So I wanted to encourage you all to watch this while you still can. It goes all through the active season, which is going to be probably through October in California, and then through early November in Colorado. And right now, because it's getting cold out, watching in the middle of the day is the best time to watch. Okay, so here's some ways that if you want to help support what we do, you can do so and you can get some things in return. First of all, we have a shop at Central Coast Snake Services where we have cool swag like our t-shirts for our company, but also my favorite here, which is this Love the Unloved, Love the Snakes. We have that in all kinds of different colors and stuff. And all the funds for these go towards rescue and relocation of snakes here on the Central Coast and also Cal Poly student research. So they're really good cause. No one's making money off of this, just going to support those. I'm also an author, and you can buy my books on those websites. These are field guides that are non-technical field guides. So California Snakes came out last year, California Lizards came out this year, and then California Amphibians comes out in February. And so if you'd like signed copies of the first two, you can get those now on my website, and you can look for Amphibians coming out in February. So here's that central hub that I told you about that I would tell you, emilytaylorscience.com. If you go to that, you can find all of our endeavors. You can follow Project Rattlecam on social media at Rattlecams. Again, there's the at Coast Snake. At the bottom there is a link from the Central Coast Snake Services website if you'd like to just make a donation to helping support the work that we do on snakes too. You can do that. As you can see, we rely on donations for what we do. So that's why we always have the donation sites, donation links handy. And with that, I'm going to I'll go back in case anyone wants to write down those links, but I'm now glad to open it up for questions. So I see we have about 10 or 15 minutes left. Perhaps the hosts here can help me to moderate some of the questions that have been asked. And please just know that you can call or text our hotline at any time if you have questions about snakes, if you want help about anything. Again, you're probably going to get me on the phone, and I love talking about snakes more than anything else. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Emily, we've had something that's never happened before happen in this one. Bob, well, there's a power outage in Los Osos.
Oh, is that
And
what
so,
happened?
yeah, so that kicked off Bob, and it also kicked out Wendy, who
Oh,
are both the tech people. And so I started recording on this computer. There's going to be a little bit of a gap, but I've been told that the chat is disabled.
oh
And
no.
so. I was wondering if Susie Reddy, if you can unmute yourself and see uh, if you can talk or chat. Yes, we've learned something important here, and I'm so glad you're a co-host on this. That way, we didn't
I
lose the
know.
entire program.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so if anybody has a question, you can send the chat to me at Nancy Foley in the chat, and I should be able to see it. So I'm Emily, I'm assuming you don't see any questions on your end.
I don't. The only chat I had seen was Nance, you putting down the phone number and stuff.
Right, right. So if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat to Nancy Foley, and I will try and read them.
That sounds perfect. And Nancy, while we wait for those to come in, what I'm going to do is preemptively answer a question that I always get. Because
Perfect.
because I've done this a time or two before. And that question is what to do if there is a snake bite. Now rattlesnake bites are very, very rare, but there's a lot of misinformation out there about what to do. So I wanted to make sure that everyone did know what to do. And it's actually very easy to remember because the answer is that anything you may have heard about that you're supposed to do to the wound, like cutting and sucking or using some sort of suction extractor device or using a tourniquet or anything like that, none of those things are good. All those are actually contraindicated. The only thing that should happen if someone is bitten by a rattlesnake is they should call 911 and get to the hospital as quickly as possible. They should, if they have any like jewelry on the limb, they should take that off because the swelling is going to commence. You don't want to have like a wedding ring swollen on your finger. That would be very painful. But you're not supposed to do anything else, like literally nothing. And then when it comes to a pet, like a dog or a cat, it's the same sort of thing. You want to take them to the emergency veterinarian. They carry antivenom for sure. Sometimes people's personal vets will too, so you can call ahead, but the emergency vets will have antivenom. You want to call ahead though, tell them you're coming. and then take off the collar so there's no constriction. Usually dogs get bit in the face because they say, "What's that?" They sniff. And so those are the main things, because for both, for animals, people, antivenom is what is going to successfully treat that envenomation because it neutralizes the venom. And this is not something that you can carry with you at home or, in the backcountry. It has to be delivered by a physician or emergency veterinarian, IV with special consideration over time. And so that's why the rattlesnake aversion training for dogs is so good, is because it prevents that whole horrible ordeal from happening to begin with. And of course, no one wants to get bit by a rattlesnake. Rattlesnake bites to people, although rarely fatal, are terribly painful. If they're very serious, they can be debilitating. They can cause tissue damage enough where someone might not have full use of their finger. And of course, they can, in some cases, if they go untreated, they can cause death. They're also very expensive for the antivenom. And so they're to be avoided at all costs. And hopefully everyone here has seen that's really why we do what we do, is to prevent that unwanted contact. We think that people can live with the rattlesnakes around them without being bitten if they just know a thing or two.
Mm-hmm. Great. So there was a question kind of associated with that. Is there any training for horses on rattlesnake aversion?
Yeah, great question. I've never heard of any horse training for rattlesnake aversion for horses. My understanding about horses is much lower. So I do tell people they should consult with their equine vet. However, I did go to a workshop once where an equine vet locally here showed people what to do. So horses are large animals. So in some cases, if the horse is bitten like on its foot or something like that, there's enough horse for the venom to dilute into that it would be able to fight it off over time. It's just a big enough animal. But the problem is if the horse gets bit in the nose, like if it's grazing and it gets bit in the nose, many of you who are horse people know that a horse can't breathe through its mouth. So if its nasal passages swell shut, it will suffocate. And so what this veterinarian brought was they brought a plastic hose that they shoved up the horse's nares. And what it does is it props that airway open so that the horse can continue breathing. So again, I'm not an expert on that, but my understanding is that if you do have a horse that's bitten by a rattlesnake, you should still call the veterinarian, seek medical care. It could include antivenom, but that the first aid for a horse being bitten is the propping open the airways.
Right. Um, how many rattlesnake species live in San Luis Obispo County?
I can't believe I didn't say that. That's terrible. One species, just one. So we only have the Northern Pacific rattlesnake here. We get calls all the time, like every week, of people saying that they have a Mojave Green in their yard. Mojave Green rattlesnakes don't occur out here. They occur way over on the other side of the Sierra Nevada in the Mojave Desert. It just so happens that a lot of our Northern Pacific rattlesnakes are greenish in color. They vary. Some of them are brown, some are black, some are green. And so if you see a greenish rattlesnake out here in SLO County or Santa Barbara County or anywhere up the coast, it's just a greenish colored Northern Pacific rattlesnakes or Southern Pacific rattlesnake. So just the one kind. And rattlesnakes are the only dangerous snakes. If you see a pointy tail on a snake in California, then it's harmless to people and pets.
Next one is how common is hawk or other bird predation on rattlesnakes? And also, do rattlesnakes predate on any birds?
Yeah, very common. I think that hawks and owls and like falcons, anyway, birds of prey are probably rattlesnakes' biggest predators. We see it, we see them getting them. I see them carrying them away. We also on our snake cameras, our live streaming cameras, sometimes see hawks, or in the case of the Colorado cam, the baby rattlesnakes get taken away by magpies. And if you go to the Project Rattle Cam YouTube site, you can search through our clips and you can find 3 clips of magpies eating baby rattlesnakes, which is pretty cool. Like, score one for the birds there. You got to give them credit, right? If they're taking rattlesnakes. Well, especially in those of you, again, probably the whole group here who are bird fans, you'll find it fascinating is that because rattlesnakes have co-evolved with their predators and their prey, that and don't let me forget to answer the second part of the question in a minute. Over many millions of years, sometimes the predator or the prey of the rattlesnake will have some resistance to the snake bite. Like some rodents can survive snake bites sometimes because they've co-evolved with them and there's been natural selection to survive it. Well, everyone always wondered if that was the case for birds. And finally, there's a paper published last year, and the answer is no. Birds do not have resistance to rattlesnake venom. They're just brilliant instead. I don't know if anyone, I bet some of you naturalists have seen it, where if a hawk goes to catch a gopher snake, it can tell it's a gopher snake. It just grabs it. It's harmless. If it's a rattlesnake, it'll stomp on its head and rip the head off and throw the head away and take the body away, which is so wonderfully fascinating that they basically know that they're going to get killed otherwise. And then, yeah, to answer your question, Northern Pacific rattlesnakes eat a small number of birds. So their diet is going to be primarily lizards when they're babies, and then rodents as they get bigger, especially California ground squirrels. But there are some, they are opportunistically will eat birds. And then there's some other species of rattlesnakes that do eat more birds, like speckled rattlesnakes over in the southeast or southwestern US.
Okay. Could you talk about distribution in SLO County? In particular, we don't see a lot of rattlesnakes along the north coast like Cambria.
Yeah, great question. Rattlesnakes are super spotty. So after doing this for about 6 years, what I've realized is that there's hot spots that in some cases I can make hypotheses for why that's true, but in other cases I can't. So first of all the places where there's lots of rattlesnakes are adjacent to open spaces where the snakes are coming from. So good examples are Lake Nacimiento, High School Hill in San Luis Obispo, everywhere in Los Osos except for right downtown. So the rattlesnakes are going to be on the beach in Los Osos, down by the golf course. They're also going to be up in the hills on the MDO side. So lots of rattlesnakes at homes in Los Osos. And then of course spread throughout in other places I've mentioned tonight that are up against open space. One of the main reasons we don't see as many up there in like Cambria, Cayucas area, my guess is because of the weather and the historic land use. So there are rattlesnakes in Cambria, but we tend to get those more inland. As you start going up into the mountains a little bit is when you start seeing those. We don't get a lot of snake calls there. My hypothesis is that it's a lot of ranchers who have a history of dealing with rattlesnakes on their own. It's not like typically when people call us, it's more because they've moved to the area more recently. They don't want to deal with the rattlesnakes themselves. So we do get a little bit of bias in terms of where people are calling from. But it's also can be a little bit colder up there, and rattlesnakes don't like to live in really cold areas. That said, some of the places where the rattlesnakes are the most thick are places where we get lots of coastal fog. So, Montaña de Oro, Guadalupe Dunes, all those places are big rattlesnake areas. So there's probably a lot more complicated reasons for that. But it is what it is.
Okay. This person asked, how about roadrunners? I've seen one with a small snake in its beak.
Oh yeah, roadrunners. I mean, we all know they're like velociraptors. They eat everything. They mostly I've seen them with lizards, but I've also seen photos of them online with little snakes, and I'm sure they eat rattlesnakes. I don't believe that they were part of the study. I think it was only birds of prey who were studied. But my guess is that this is just a guess. Somebody would need to come and study it at Cal Poly or somewhere else. That roadrunners probably don't have local resistance to that. They're just my guess again. Not a. I'm like, oh my god, I say something about birds to bird people. Tell me if I'm wrong. I hypothesize that roadrunners have a really broad diet, and so since they're not really specializing on rattlesnakes, that they may not have a strong natural selection pressure to be resistant. So they're probably going to do what the magpies do, which is they grab them by the head. They grab them by the head and they peck, 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 so that they have no chance of being bitten. That's my guess.
Right. Let's see, I have how many bites are local hospitals reporting per year?
It's a great question. I actually don't have access to our local hospital data, but I can tell you that in California, there's about 800 bites a year from rattlesnakes. So here on the Central Coast, I don't know what that means, but it's probably around, 10 to maybe 15, maybe 20 per year is just a random guess there. And of course, there aren't any deaths. We would hear about deaths nearby. There's only about an average of 3.5 deaths from all snake bites in the United States every single year in the whole country. And those are mostly people who fail to seek medical treatment. So again, I'm not trying to minimize rattlesnake bites because even if their life is being saved from the antivenom, including here in California, where we have really good hospitals in the local area that know how to treat snake bite, good antivenom, it's still terribly unpleasant and also very, very, very expensive. So there was a bite 10 years ago now, Lake Kachuma. So Boy Scout stepped on a rattlesnake and his medical bills were over $600,000. And that was 10 years.
Mm.
And so it's just a terrible, terrible thing to have happen, which is why we focus so much on preventing people from having to deal with snakes themselves, preventing people from having their dogs in situations where they might sniff a rattlesnake. All those types of things are because the bites are just so severe and so terrible for the plight of the rattlesnake too. Like it's obviously if we care about rattlesnakes, it's good to try to keep those accidents from happening. which is
Mhm.
why we invest so much in that. Yeah.
That certain person asked, are baby snakes more venomous?
No. So I'm glad I asked that. That is like the myth number one. That I do. There's a talk that I do, like another version of a talk like this that I do, which is myth busting rattlesnakes. And probably the number one myth that people have heard is some version of babies being more dangerous. So everyone here probably has heard something like, oh, maybe they can't control their venom until they release more or whatever. But none of that's true. They can and do control their venom. They are the second they're born, they have venom, and so they're capable of a dangerous bite. And so it's not like a baby rattlesnake gives a bite, you don't have to go to the hospital. That's not true. Everyone should go to the hospital with a rattlesnake bite. But on average, what you see is that because adults inject more venom on average, that a bite from an adult has a greater risk of being worse. So you see this kind of increase in severity of the snake bite on average with the size of the snake.
And so that same person is asking, can the snake bite multiple times?
Yes, it can bite multiple times and envenomate multiple times in a row. And so with people, that doesn't happen all that often because usually if someone's bit by a rattlesnake, they've realized it and they've backed away. But with dogs, it can happen all the time because, think about it, right? We go around the corner, see a rattlesnake. What do? You freeze and you back up. A dog goes, "What's that wiggly thing?" and sniffs it and gets bit in the face. And it doesn't hurt right away. So they can get bit multiple times sometimes before, and they can get venom each time. Or multiple dogs can or cats can kind of gang up on a rattlesnake and they can all be envenomated. It's terrible.
This person's really into rattlesnakes.
Great.
Can they bite through hiking boots?
Another great question. I'm so glad they asked that. So, the thick hiking boots that many of us have that don't have those breathable mesh panels in them, no, they can't. And so, it's you just want to use your common sense. Like if you feel thick leather, like a thick cowboy boot kind of leather, snake cannot bite through that. However, they can bite through those breathable mesh panels that so many of us have, so we don't get sweaty feet. And also, if someone steps on a rattlesnake and it's biting in self-defense, they might bite the foot, they might bite the ankle, but they also could bite the calf. So that's why it's really important just to kind of pay attention to your surroundings. I mean, if you're watching where you're going, you're not going to step on a rattlesnake on a trail as long as you're watching where you're going. Most of the legitimate bites we call, which are accidental bites like that, if someone gets bit in the leg, it's because they're walking around in tall grass. Or honestly, a lot of them are because people are walking around at night with their flip-flops on or barefoot. And even though the rattlesnakes on the Central Coast are primarily day active, in places around here where it gets hot at night, like I live in Atascadero, the snakes stay out after dark. So there's a chance of being bitten by a snake on the foot that way.
Yeah, I loved all those questions by the by the way. Oh, just got one more. Can stomping along a hiking trail give them a chance to scatter?
Yeah, that's a really controversial question because on the one hand, if you make a lot of noise and stomp, then it can be the rattlesnakes do want to get away from you. So they might be like, okay, I'm out of here. But on the other hand, it can do something which would be the exact opposite, which is if there's a snake that's resting, its first line of defense is camouflage. And if it feels like it's more stressed out, then it might rattle to defend itself, or it might even strike. And it doesn't even have to do it in those orders. Rattlesnakes don't rattle necessarily before they strike. And so you run the risk if you're stomping around like that of riling up a snake so that if you do step near it, it could be more likely to bite. So I recommend that people don't do that kind of thing, that people just wear good footwear and keep their dogs on a leash and just generally watch where you're going. And then most times people aren't going to get bit by a rattlesnake. It's just very, very unlikely in that case.
This person asks, do other snakes commonly bite humans in the county?
Only if they're being picked up. So a rattlesnake can bite a person without the person handling them. And that's because rattlesnakes are ambush foragers, meaning that they curl up like a little cinnamon bun. And if you step near them, it's not that they think that you're a rodent and they're striking, it's that they're scared about that thing. And they have this mechanism where they can strike and envenomate and release. And they're prone to doing that because that's, in addition to their offense, that's how they kill prey. It's also one of their defensive mechanisms is to envenomate. In contrast, other things like gopher snakes, king snakes, they don't have venom. And so they're constrictors. They constrict their prey. And they don't have any defense against a person. The only thing they could do would be to, you know, bite to defend themselves, but they're not going to do that unless they've been picked up. And so if you pick up a gopher snake or, gopher snake, I like to say it's about a 50% chance it'll bite you. Gopher snakes are funny. They're either super mellow or they're just like, kill you. And I try to pretend like they're rattlesnakes. They shake their little tails just like a rattlesnake does. They do everything, but they're scared. But again, bites from any other snake in California are going to be totally harmless. It'll be like little pinpricks, and you just wash it with soap and water, and you're fine. Rattlesnakes are the only ones to worry about in California. As soon as you leave California, all bets are off. In California, that's the rule.
So I think we have one more question. If you're many hours walking from your car, is it recommended to hike out or stay still and wait to be evacuated?
If you're many hours, then you should call 911 and get a medevac helicopter. So there's a saying among medical professionals who are experts in snakebite treatment, which is time is tissue. So the longer you wait, the more likelihood you have of having tissue damage, which could maybe be permanent. And so rattlesnake bites are really dynamic. You can never tell how much venom was injected. Every rattlesnake, due to its size and its population, has slightly variable venom. The venoms interact differently with people's physiology based on their health. So they're super unpredictable. It might have been a mild bite where you have some swelling and you're going to be okay. But more likely than that, it's going to be something more serious, and it could be something very serious. Because you don't know that, and because the longer you wait, the worse off you are. And finally, because if someone's trying to wander back towards a trailhead, for example, rattlesnake venoms can make people's brains do weird things sometimes too, right? It can make people become distressed physiologically. They could wander and get lost. They could walk off a cliff. They could do things that are dangerous. And for those reasons, people should get a medevac helicopter. Now, my final thing I'll say, because I think this is the last question, is to make sure that because people here are all outdoors people, here's a hot tip for you, which is beyond just snake bite. It's for any kind of medical emergency that you might have if you're out in the great outdoors. Um, Basic, obvious things like people knowing where you are, doing check-ins, that's very important. But it used to be that if you were going to be off the grid, then and something happened, you'd be in trouble. There's nothing you could do, right? But now most of us, our cell phones, if we have a newer iPhone or other type of phone, they have an SOS signal where you can actually get that emergency signal out to somebody via text, even if there's no cell signal. So make sure you know how to use that and look into your system. And if you don't have that, consider getting like a spot GPS or some other kind of device. It'll save your life for the most unexpected reason. It may be a snake bite. It's probably going to be something else, but it's good to know about.
Yeah, that's a great information to have, and we all highly recommend those kind of devices to get help when you need it.
Yes.
Um, there was okay, I'll make this one the final one. Is a Mojave green bite treatable?
Yes, Mojave green bite is absolutely treatable. There's not as many bites from Mojave greens as there are from northern and southern Pacific rattlesnakes, but that's just because there's fewer people out there. Mojave greens are not any more aggressive, despite what people might tell you, than southern or northern Pacific rattlesnakes. Their venoms, I'm sure you're referring to, the venoms in many populations, including some of those here in California, have high neurotoxin concentrations. Well, it turns out that so do some southern Pacific rattlesnake ones. So it's very complicated. But the point is that the antivenoms are effective against Mojave rattlesnake bites. Also, when you go to the hospital for a rattlesnake bite, they are giving antivenom to treat the venom that's in the body, but they're also giving supportive care for any other things that might be happening. So God forbid if somebody has a bad rattlesnake, Mojave rattlesnake envenomation, which the neurotoxin is causing trouble breathing, then they can have supportive care for breathing until the venom is neutralized. And so for that reason, there's very, very, very few deaths from Mojave rattlesnake bites per year. They are highly vilified and they shouldn't be. They're a really cool snake.
Well, Emily, thank you so much. It's been really informative. You can tell that your energy is all behind the snakes, and we can all appreciate that as conservationists across the board. So, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody that joined. I'm sorry about those people from Los Osos that got kicked out, including our tech support. But I'm glad we were able to continue. So again, thank you so much. Yeah, there are a bunch of people saying thank you. So
Thank you.
really, we really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Stay in touch.